wer jetzt noch sein Mikrofon angeschaltet hat, bitte ich das unten links auszuschalten, dass wir wirklich auch nur Jill und Céline hören können, die uns aus Schottland zugeschaltet sind, beziehungsweise ich glaube, Jill ist in London.
Yes.
Und da ist Jill im Bild und ja, die beiden werden übernehmen. Und ich würde mal sagen, wir fangen so in ein paar Minuten an. So Jill, just a couple of minutes, so 2 minutes or so. You can start over.
Perfect.
Wir haben rechts einen Chat angeschaltet. Wer möchte, kann den mit anschalten und Fragen stellen darüber. Kann jeder Fragen stellen. Wir versuchen sie zu beantworten und können auch auf Deutsch gestellt werden. Ich würde sie dann einfach an Jill weiterleiten auf Englisch oder wir beantworten sie dann halt selber. Okay, Jill.
Hello. I was trying very hard. I was very excited. I was like, I will learn German for hello, which is hello. So I do not feel as impressed as I would like to have been. I was hoping to have sounded more impressive, but I have guten Abend. Is that right? Guten
Yeah,
Abend?
that's good. Yeah, great.
I have one phrase, so you might hear that quite a lot through the evening because I am not great. Thank you for the thumbs up. So Céline and I are going to talk through some of our new whiskies this evening and some old classics as well. Hopefully everyone has their packs and we are ready to go. But shall we give people a couple of minutes to get settled and have their whiskies ready, or are you all?
I hope that everybody, because we had a preparation manual so that the people see what they have to do. And preparation number 1 was putting all the whiskies in the glass.
I must say, this is the best organized tasting with the most organized people I have ever been involved in. I'm not sure if
Germany, Jill.
I know. It is incredible. I am so excited. Everyone just seems to know what to do. No, this will be brilliant. But yes, well, if everyone is ready, shall we do the most important thing and drink? And then
Yes.
we will talk. We will talk as we go.
I'll keep an eye on the chat box, but if you want me to answer any questions, you may have to type them in English, I'm afraid. So if you want to Jill or I to answer questions in the chat box, by all means, but do that in English for us.
Please.
Otherwise, we will make a translation on that.
Yes, thank you, Gerd. The only thing I can now do is good evening. So I don't think we're going to get many questions that are mainly just that. But yeah, let's start. We're going to start with the first whiskey called The Story of the Spaniard. I know that when I am at tastings, I like to start by nosing and tasting my whiskey as soon as possible to really get me in the spirit of the tasting. So unfortunately, Gerd has mentioned I'm in London. I only moved a month ago. I have only got tall glasses. So all my whiskey comes in a tall glass, but is filled quite low. So that is the main thing. This is water. So if you see me drinking from that, it is not a big whiskey. But yes, so we will start with The Story of the Spaniard. If everyone would like to have a smell, I am waiting for my whiskey to come up the glass. This whiskey was inspired by sherry and red wine casks. What we are looking to do is create big, round, rich flavors, lots of red fruit, lots of sweetness, but we've also added in some bourbon finished whiskey, like any of your classic kind of Speyside whiskey. So lots of vanilla and creaminess. I actually have a bottle behind me. I see Céline is also organized. But what we are looking to do is have sweet vanilla, rich red fruit, that beautiful kind of rich sherry flavor. And we are also introducing some French oak style whiskey. Now, French oak is very heavily wooded. It has lots and lots of oak and barrel influence. And so it just rounds off these 3 big flavors to create one very balanced style of whiskey. Please feel free, by the way, to also drink. We're not just smelling this evening. It is Thursday?
Yeah.
It is Thursday. I was going to say it's only Wednesday, and then I thought, oh no, it's Thursday. Everyone can have a good night. You have only one day left before the end of the week.
What is time anymore? What are days anymore?
Who and where are we? My mother was very excited. It is Christmas next week, which I am not ready. Psychologically, it is June for me. It's just the weather is telling me that it is later. But yes, hopefully on the nose, everyone is getting fruity flavors, some oaky flavors, and when you taste, also like a dryness, lots and lots of balance. But also, my favorite smell that comes from this whiskey is the smell of blue cheese. So big blue vein cheeses. I don't know what the German equivalent of Stilton is, but if there is a big ripe cheese, brie also goes very, very well with this, and all kinds of just gorgeous cured meats. This is a big whiskey, so it can hold a lot of flavor, and I love it. I think it is very big, and it goes very, very well with a lot of kind of stronger foods that you can kind of pair it with. Gerd has just spotlighted me, and I feel there is a lot of me on the camera at the moment. So I'm just like, so yes. If anyone has any questions as well, please feel free to chat, or you can put up, I'm not great with Zoom, but there's a little high five button if you want to ask a question specifically as well. Please feel free. Céline and I, between us, have had pretty much experience in every part of whiskey that you can get, from sampling grain as it comes into distilleries all the way through to selling the whiskey in the bottles at the end. Sometimes even we have helped put the whiskey in the bottles, which can be more stressful than you imagine. So yeah, we are totally available if there's anything you would like to talk about. Someone has asked, it was a restaurant for the States first. So there is a little confusion, completely understandably, about the story of the Spaniard, because when we first worked with a brand called the Spaniard in the United States, who are a bar, we made a very limited edition for them, maybe 200 cases, maybe not even that much. And it is a very different recipe. It does have sherry. It's got lots and lots of Colilla and rich smoky flavors. And then John loved the idea of the sherry in that whiskey so much that he decided to make a permanent product, which became the story of the Spaniard. Now, the only problem with that is he has such a similar name that often people would have the crossover between the two, but it is inspired by a whiskey we made, but is not actually the whiskey that was made for the restaurant. But if ever we can travel to America again and go to the bars of New York, the Spaniard bar is amazing. They will do you a beautiful whiskey or an incredible whiskey cocktail. So yeah, highly recommended. I don't know about you, Céline, but I know that I love the story of the Spaniard for like a Boulevardier or any of the kind of more Campari-based cocktails.
Yeah. Because it's got quite a lot of sweetness with the wine cask, so it gives you that lovely kind of, you need the bitterness from the Campari and the sweetness from the whiskey. I think it works very well. It's really lovely balance.
I know. I feel like this is where Céline and I kind of fall down a rabbit hole of just talking about things we love to eat and drink. But to be honest, almost everything that comes to whiskey, I love whiskey as an experience, not just a drink, but to share it with friends, to have it with dinner. And I know that Céline and I try our hardest when we can and when we can see each other to make sure to combine dinner and whiskey together. So yeah, it's really good.
This is actually going to be my Christmas whiskey for food.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, because it goes very well with, we do in the UK, we do a dessert called mince pie. So it sounds awful, but it's actually quite tasty. It's like dried fruits in pastry. And you usually soak up the fruit with whiskey just to give it a bit more flavor. So this year I have actually soaked up my raisins in fruit in the story of the Spaniard. So
Céline,
that's going to be an exciting one for Christmas time.
Céline used to come down to London for our Christmas night out when we would have it, and she would always bring mince pies with her. and we have been deprived of them this year, but they are too good, actually. I'm glad you're not coming this year because I cannot stop. I eat them constantly. They just, suddenly the whole plate is gone. They are delicious. But yes, British Christmases are full of kind of whiskey and brandy soaked everything, really. Christmas cake and all the mince pies, because we love
any excuse.
any excuse for more booze on Christmas Day. Well, hopefully everyone enjoyed their story of the Spaniard. If anyone does think of any questions later, please feel free to ask. Is everyone ready to move on to the second whiskey, or would they like a few minutes? Because I realise that's only been 10 minutes since we started, and I don't want anyone to be hurrying through all their samples.
Everyone enjoying it?
Yes,
yeah.
I think, yes.
Good.
Yeah, just leave that. give them some time for drinking and enjoying the whiskey, of course.
Yeah, of course.
So, no worries.
No worries.
We're not in a rush today. We're all locked down in Germany. So what else to do?
You have all been put on a stricter lockdown now for winter, is that correct?
Yes, until 10th of January. So yeah, the necessary shops are open, but all the others are closed. So and in some areas of Germany, there will be a stricter policy on that. So yeah, it depends on the numbers.
Yeah.
It's not today, for not COVID time, not talking about pandemic, please.
No, it's whiskey time.
We are out so much, so, and yeah, whiskey stores are open. I just read that, and
that's the most important. Exactly, to get you through.
It's necessary.
I was going to say the best thing is everyone is here this evening and everyone has their whiskey, so that is the most important thing. I have enjoyed a lot all these tastings. I would never usually get to do a tasting with all of you guys and enjoy whiskey with so many different people. So Zoom has definitely made whiskey tasting different, and I think maybe more exciting. And I get to see Céline all the time.
I know.
So someone's asking about the diagrams in the leaflets. I'm just bringing it up so I can explain. So if we go to the very first one, which is the story of the Spaniard. So around the outside of the circle, we have each of the different portions of blended malts and single malts that we have included. So if I look on my screen at the left-hand side, I've got Deanston Distillery, Refill Sherry Butt, single malt, 7.3%, and then plums and berries. Now, you may notice that the diagram is a circle, and much like a tree, each ring of the circle denotes a year of the life of each of the whiskies. So while we are not allowed to give the age information casually, if you are willing to take the time, you can count each ring and it will tell you the age of each of the whiskies that we used in the parcel. So it is a little subversive, but yes, our diagrams, and they're all worked like this. So it's meant to look like the rings of a tree, and you count out from the center and it tells you the age and the components and the percentage used in each of the blends. I'm just going to continue drinking this because it's so delicious.
So you will notice as well on the guide that we've actually named the distilleries, because that's something that Compass Bucks is really proud of, is the fact that we're very transparent as a company. And we have no secrets. I mean, you guys want to know what you're drinking, and we're very proud to be using those whiskies. So it's important for us to be able to tell you exactly what's going on in your dram when you're having it. So that's why when we do tastings, the only thing we're not technically allowed to mention is the age of the whiskies. But other than that, we can technically tell you everything else there is to know. So we tell you about the types of casks, how long we've married the whiskies for, what kind of blends we've created, what distilleries we've used. So in the case of the Spaniard, it's actually what's called a blended malt Scotch whiskey. So it's 100% single malt, but it's single malts coming from different distilleries. So I know that a lot of people, particularly in Germany, you're really fond of your single malts. And a lot of people seem to think that blended whiskies are evil and rubbish. Well, we like to think differently because we obviously blenders, that's what we do. So we think blends are fantastic. And also, just because you like single malt doesn't mean that you can't like a blended malt, because it's very, very similar. It's just a single malt that we combine with another one from a different distillery to create more complexity and more richness. So do you want to kind of go through the different distilleries, maybe, Jill, just to
of course.
why we've used those?
Of course. So different distilleries have different flavors that they produce. And one of the most elegant ways I ever heard of someone describing blending was in the same way that an artist will paint. So if you paint a beautiful picture and you blend a beautiful whiskey using only one color, so maybe using only blue, or used with only one whiskey, so maybe Glenfiddich, for example, the core flavor will be that classic Glenfiddich apple and pear flavor, and that painting will be beautiful with all these different shades of blue. However, you can never create another flavor or a different style of whiskey other than that classic Glenfiddich. You'll never be able to create another color in that painting. When you blend, if we use a Glenfiddich, which is blue, and Macallan, which we might consider that to be red, when we combine those two together, we can have purple and blue and red. We can begin to bring all different flavors that one distillery on their own couldn't create, and we can paint a more beautiful picture with color and with flavor than we could do if we were using only one single malt. And I think that's a really lovely way to put it, because I think it's a bit like being a chef. You wouldn't expect a chef to create a beautiful dish with just one herb or just salt. You would expect them to use all the different flavors they could to create a really beautiful meal. And that's what blending is for. Blending is for taking beautiful whiskies and elevating them up and making them even more beautiful by bringing in new flavors. So for something like the story of the Spaniard, we've this beautiful Deanston, which is rich and lovely, and it's very mellow with all its sherry, and it's just delicious. We've brought in some Strathmill, which is from first fill bourbon barrels and recharred bourbon barrels, and it is fresh and light, but it's got vanilla and grassy notes that you don't find in Deanston. So when we put them together, they begin to complement each other, these rich, red, heavy notes with these light, sweet vanilla notes. And then as we blend in each new component, it brings and lifts the whiskey to a new and kind of different style. So yeah. The story of the Spaniard is actually quite an interesting blend, along with hedonism, which is here. So I'm just like, that was quite a stretch for a second. I didn't think I was going to make it. Hedonism and the story of the Spaniard are our only two blends that we make where we don't focus on a recipe specifically. We focus on the flavor and the style of the whiskey. So for the story of the Spaniard, rich and red, lots of sherry, oak and red wine. For hedonism, we want sweet, creamy vanilla. Now, someone in the questions, someone in the chat has asked, what does the batch information mean? And because we don't have a recipe for making the story of the Spaniard or hedonism, we put batch information on the back of the bottles. All this means is that whenever you pick up a bottle of whiskey, this one, I'm going to hold this up. Also, when I hold this up, everyone can enjoy my nice new Christmas nails that I painted last night. But when I hold it up, you might be able to see it is from 2018 and it's batch B. This will have a different recipe to the whiskey which you are drinking today. As far as I can remember, the 2018 second batch, actually I'm going to cheat and check my notes, has Glen Elgin, not Strathmill in it. It's got lots of tea and Enoch, not just red wine casks, but also sherry butts. It's got no Craigellachie, which I actually think takes away a little of the blue cheese notes, but brings a richness from a Glendullan, which we then used in the third batch as well. But we want, as Céline said, to be as honest and as open as possible. And we want everyone to be able to enjoy our whiskies to their best ability. And that means that all you need to do, if you ever have a question for us about the whiskey you're drinking or what's in your glass, is email hello@compassboxwhiskey.com. We will tell you, if you tell us which batch you have, we will tell you exactly what whiskey and how, what percentages and the age of the whiskey that you're drinking at that time.
So there was a question, how big is the batch for the
was it, how big
2019A batch of the Spaniard? How many casks or how many bottles?
That is not a question I am usually asked, so give me 2 seconds. We are very lucky. Oh, my computer is having a small error. If you let me connect through, I will try and find that out for you, either by the end of the tasting, or if, as my computer usually does, it does not let me connect, I can send you that information. Because we only make single batches of the Spaniard at a time, we don't fill it back into cask, we blend it and then we bottle it. Computer. Sorry if that's everyone's hearing my computer having a little meltdown. But because we only make a batch and then we fill it straight into the bottles after it's rested, we don't actually have information about how big a batch would be at a usual time, but I've managed to get my computer to work. So in the 2019 story of the Spaniard bottling, and this is much more in depth than we would usually go, which is why I don't have it ready. Let's see. We used, do a little Excel count here. We used 70 different casks. Nope, 69 different casks in total of all the different whiskies. So we used, of those 69 casks, 7.3% is the Deanston. We've got these are all our casks all together. I don't have a bottle count of exactly how many we made, but Céline is probably going to be amazing with her quick math. Oh, here we go. We made 20,700 bottles in total. Okay. So that is actually, for us, that would be considered a huge bottling. That is, I mean, our limited editions are usually between 5,000 and 10,000. But I remember when we made our first big batch of whiskey, I was amazed when we bottled 12,000 of the bottles. I was like, this is big. And then I remember that someone like Johnny Walker will release a limited edition and it will be 250,000 bottles. So even our big bottlings are tiny, and they are 1/10 of the size of some of the bigger companies. So yeah, even though you can still get it, it feels very limited. Oh, what was that, my love?
How many times a year do you make the story of the Spaniard?
The first year we made it twice, because when something is a new release, demand is huge. We usually make it once a year. So we vat at the end of the year, usually in November, and then bottle it for the following year. We are actually vatting though, because of how busy our bottlers have been this year, and with different limitations, we are going to be doing this in March. So it's 3 months late, but fortunately, the last time we made the story of the Spaniard, we made lots again. So 20,000 bottles, and that's meant that we will bottle again in March. So that will be April week when you see the next lot come out. So yeah.
So
next whiskey, please. Just by that, Joe, because I think the people are thirsty now.
Yes, please. I know, never, always. Someone just needs to let me know and we will move on to the next one. Let us move on to Spice Tree, which, while Céline is saying that the story of the Spaniard is her Christmas whiskey, Spice Tree is mine. I love Spice Tree because usually when I have Christmas parties, I make a full bottle of this into old fashions and I keep it in the freezer so that when friends come round, I can be I like to pretend that I am like some wonderful hostess and I'm like a whiskey cocktail and I can just pour it straight into a glass, little twist of orange, and I'm like, ta-da, domestic goddess. So this gives me great joy because I always feel very organized if I have a bottle of Spice Tree nearby because I know that I can make someone a good drink. Let's see. Someone has said, I tried on, so they are already ahead. We've got some people who've been very thirsty, and that is completely understandable. We went on a little diversion there, but Spice Tree is one of our longest running permanent whiskies. First created in 2005, and now, nearly 15 years it has been going, nearly 16. We use French oak headed casks. So we take our curvy barrels and remove the flat ends, replace them with virgin toasted oak from France, and then we fill our blend into these casks and mature them for a further 2 years. Now, I hope everyone, while I'm chatting, please feel free to smell and to drink. Céline actually has a bit of one of our, now I'm going to murder the French language when I say this, the limousine oak. I'm sure that's not how you pronounce it, but I try. But we do 4 different toast types of these French oak casks, and 3 of them are used for Spice Tree and Oak Cross. They are our medium heavy toast, which is a malty, rich cereal flavour that comes from the wood. We've got our high vanilla toast, which is our lightest style of toast and creates all this beautiful caramel vanilla sweetness. And we use a high mocha toast, and that high mocha toast has like a burnt coffee bean, dark chocolate spiciness about it. That's why when you drink the Spice Tree and you get that ginger and that lovely kind of like cinnamon cardamom kind of flavour, the thing you get, I realised I've not poured myself one, so I'm just going to pour one just now. It's nice when you hear that pop out the bottle. But that's why when you drink this, you get these rich kind of flavours. A lot of that spice all comes from the oak. Now, one of my favourite things about Spice Tree is how well it goes with things like Angostura. It's a fantastically easy to drink whiskey, but it's so blendable. I use it in all my cocktails. Céline uses it in baking quite a bit. She is a very amazing baker. If anyone went to the whiskey show, the virtual whiskey show this year in London, you will have experienced Céline on screen with all her cakes and amazing everyone with her whiskey baking. But Spice Tree, just, there's something about it that's really warming and it feels very Christmassy. To me, it is the perfect Christmas whiskey. Céline, you will confirm Speculoos biscuits.
Speculoos, yeah.
Speculoos. I have been told that they taste very similar to Spice Tree.
Oh.
I think that it's more the Linzer biscuits that you get in IKEA. They're really cinnamon butter biscuits. For me, that is their food equivalent. And like them, I can just quietly sip at these until the whole bottle is gone. In the same way I can eat a whole box of those biscuits until they somehow disappear. And I'm like, oh, where did they go?
Goes very well with marzipan as well, because I know you guys are really big on marzipan in Germany. I remember last year I was lucky enough to try some of the local marzipan. I think it is made in Kiel, isn't it, Gerd?
Yes, we got that from Lübeck, which is very close to our hometown here.
It's the best thing I've ever had, and Spice Tree is like literally the marriage made in heaven.
Oh, really?
Actually, when you taste marzipan in UK, it's the other way around when it comes to almonds and sugar. So the sugar content in the UK is the almond content in Germany. So it's way up higher. In Germany, the almond content, especially when you got the special marzipan from Lübeck. So, and it's much richer.
It's amazing.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it is.
So the German one is much fattier and kind of nuttier and richer.
Yes.
Oh,
Actually, when you go to our friend's Jim Murray's Whiskey Bible, you will read a tasting note. If you really look closely, you will find one tasting note where he writes tastes like marzipan in brackets Lübeck's finest.
Lübeck's finest.
Because he tasted it when he visited us, and he tasted in Lübeck. He tasted the marzipan and on Lübeck ground. So, and he was so impressed that he put it in his tasting notes.
Well, I have never been a big fan of marzipan. I've always found it far too sweet. So I will have to try German marzipan, Lübeck marzipan. I shall remember that.
I will keep this in my records.
Yes, don't worry, Gerd. We will email about this for the future. I know when I have to try it there. I know that's the thing. I think it will only be the best if I drink it, if I eat it while I'm in Germany, while I'm holding a glass of Spice Tree. But yes, I love rich and fatty kind of flavors go so well with spice tree. Even things like panna cotta. We often talk about some of our whiskies tasting of panna cotta, but I love the spice tree to be paired with very heavy cream kind of things. Pardon me. I would love to have like make whiskey butter with spice tree because it is so rich and so spreadable and just delicious. So yeah. Oh, what has Gerd got there? Is that a little bit of cheese, or is it a little bit of marzipan?
Is he going to tease us with the marzipan?
Very rude.
Oh my God, I hate you right now.
At the moment, I'm ambivalent, but I'm sure I can get jealous. Once I've tasted it, I'll be wondering where it's been all my life. But I know, and I love in the chat, people always do this. Whenever I do tastings with Zoom, people always leave me recommendations.
Right.
So I'm always grateful. I usually copy paste them at the end into a Word document so I can go through and like pick out all the best things. Sometimes people give me recommendations for places in London that I've never been. To have like the best cheese toasty was the last time I did that. But yeah, good to know where I can get the best marzipan. I will company. Shall we, if
Yes.
everyone is ready, move on to whiskey number 3, because I have a feeling that the Peat Monster is going to be a big fan for everyone.
Rogue's Banquet.
Rogue's Banquet is
sorry.
Yes.
Yes, so it is. I am so sorry. I have this out of order because it was being organised earlier by moving things. I am so sorry about that. But yeah, let's talk about Rogue's Banquet. Sorry. So we're going to finish. Our trio of unpeated whiskies, and then we're going to move into some real heavy peated whiskies. But Rogue's Banquet is one of the whiskies made by James, our whiskey maker, James Saxon. He's been with us for 2 years now, and it was his greatest wish this year that he made a 20th anniversary whiskey, which just kind of summed up all the things that Compass Box is about. So it's fun and it's joyful and it's got loads of rich, beautiful flavour in it. It's got loads of fruity, just waxy gorgeousness. We've got some Clynelish that's working in there, which, as anyone who is a Compass Box fan will know, is John's favourite whiskey. So we've got lots of Clynelish. We've got Milton Duff, North British and Glenelgin. And we've got this exceptional and joyful label, which is just wild. We wanted this to be like a revelry, like a party, like something that just kind of makes you happy when you look at it and makes you happy when you drink it. So that's, and I think James is really, he's really managed it. Rogue's is beautiful and probably one of my favorite whiskies that we've made this year. I think it's probably my favorite limited edition from this year. But I say that my problem is I will tell everyone my favorite limited edition is the one I'm drinking because it is at that very minute. But yeah, so we have Rogue's Banquet.
So the fun fact about the label is that because it was the anniversary, we thought it would be a nice way to celebrate all of our characters that we've been using over the years. So we use a lot of different characters on the whiskies, and we thought because Rogue's Banquet is to celebrate 20 years of Compass Box and 20 years of limited editions, we just reuse some of our very special characters from over the years.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever get a chance to look at the label closely, you can play a little game and try and find out exactly how many characters we've been reusing from old limited editions. So it's a really fun whiskey to drink, and it's a really fun whiskey to look at as well, because it really represents what Compass Box is all about, I suppose.
Yeah. So I will tell you a bit about North British Distillery, but Céline can tell me exactly how far away from her North British Distillery is.
I'm about 5 miles down the road from the North British Distillery.
That was a very Scottish road that you said there. It was a lovely roll of the R. So North British...
I can't go there because I'm in a different tier. So I'm plagued into my own area. I'm not allowed to go into the other area of Edinburgh at the moment. So
I know. It's torturous to know it's so close and yet so far. But North British is a grain distillery. So they make grain malt whiskey in continuous stills. And we use North British a lot. It is one of the components we use very regularly in our regular batch hedonism. We almost always get it in first or rechar bourbon barrels. So we're looking for sweet and rich. And the first fill bourbon barrel North British whiskey that we have here is beautiful because it's 25 years old. It's very fruity and kind of fun. It's had long enough in the cask that the high kind of like solvent notes that you get off of young whiskey has completely gone. It's settled into itself. It's really relaxed into the wood, and it's begun to get these nice, fresh, kind of beautifully fruity flavors. I think it's a little tropical fruit personally, but I think I think all grain whiskey, when it gets to a certain age, has a little touch of mango in it, which makes me very happy. All the names for all the different whiskies are inspired by all different things. Rogue's Banquet was actually inspired by an album John has from the Rolling Stones called Beggar's Banquet, and he wanted almost like this rogues gallery of greatest hit whiskies, which is why we've got some old Clynelish in there. We've also got beautiful old North British as a nod to how the company started. And yeah, he just wanted it to be like this big party whiskey. Something like Peat Monster was inspired by a conversation that was had with John and the guy from the whiskey, oh gosh, what is it? New York Whiskey club that he had created Peat Monster for. I want to say Fifth Avenue Whiskey. Does that sound about right? Yeah. And he was like, wow, that's a real monster when he was trying
the
to
Park
blend.
Avenue liquor shop.
Park Avenue, thank you. Gerd knows what he's talking about, so it's good that we've got one person who can steer us right.
I'm in it long enough to buy that bottle from the shelf.
Oh, really?
I did, yes.
That is quite exciting. I must admit, I love our new labels. I think they're really joyful. I've got one here. I'm sure you've all seen them. It's just our little Peat Monster just having an absolutely wild time. Just kind of screaming into the void as we have all been enjoying it here. Excellent cover for a phone there as well. That's wonderful. But yeah, so Peat Monster was just sprang from a discussion with the buyer when they were talking about the style of the whiskey, and when they tried it, they were like, "That's a real monster," and so the Peat Monster was born.
We have more food recommendations here. It's amazing.
I did see the word salmon, and I got quite excited.
With rye bread and little creme fraiche. I like the sound of that. That
sounds like just a generally excellent sandwich. Céline got harassed during our whiskey tastings. Basically, we always try and come up with new flavors and new things to pair, so we can put that on the list of like deliciousness.
Yes,
I'm quite a big fan of just the like rye crackers with, and this is probably the most British thing I've ever said, like a dairy lee spread, like a soft spreadable cheese. Ideally one that's got some garlic in it is the one. I can see Céline shaking her head. She's like, no, don't talk about dairy lee. But I love that kind of really fatty, creamy, soft cheese with like those brittle kind of like dark rye biscuits. I just think they work beautifully. But creme fraiche and salmon sounds a lot classier. So maybe next time that's what I'll be providing. And yeah, definitely.
Speaking of which, we might want to move on to the Peat
section. Please.
Well, there was a question in between that hasn't been answered so far. I think it's about how you plan the upcoming blends and how much time it needs to be ready.
Well, in an ideal world, I say well because this is a point of consternation. In an ideal world, we would have 18 months from the very, very beginning of tasting for a limited edition, for tasting a cask and going, we love that, to putting things together, to when it finally came out in the bottle. So when Gerd would be able to provide it to you from when I first tasted it, 18 months. Because we're such a small company and we work with what in the industry is considered quite small quantities, we can sometimes, if we're lucky, bring all of our whiskey together within about 4 months. Sometimes for something like No Name No. 2, where we had all the samples of the casks that we wanted, And we were very lucky that we put the recipe together. It was the second version of the recipe which we made, which became the recipe for No Name number 2. So we were able to create a beautiful recipe very quickly. We were able then to purchase all the casks very quickly. And then we blended it and we let it rest. And the key is a resting period. Marrying is really important for us. We either want to fill back into barrel or we want to let it rest in our tank at our bottlers. So we want that for at least a month, but ideally 2 months to 10 weeks. So we just want to give the whiskey the time to settle. Sometimes, especially with peated whiskey, it gets quite hot and it gets quite fiery. There's a lot of smoke kind of flavour comes just because it's been mixed. And we like to give it the chance to rest before we put it back into the cask and into the bottle. So ideally, for me personally, ideally 18 months. Realistically, if we have all the pieces come together very easily, we could put out a new whiskey in 9 months. But we much prefer to plan and have everything in place than to kind of, as I would say, throw the pasta at the wall and see what sticks, because it can be really difficult sometimes. But yeah. Talking of whiskey, shall we taste the Peat Monster? And we can also discuss anything to do with any of the other whiskies while we go. Am I expecting a lot of peat heads today? Should I be expecting a lot of peated whiskey fans?
You're damn right, I think.
Excellent. We are about to start on Peat Monster, which is, and again, I will say this, my favourite of our permanent collection. I love Peat Monster. It is, without a doubt, the whiskey that I go for over all our other whiskies. If I'm out and I want a whiskey, I will have a Peat Monster. Oh no, someone said they hate peat. Don't worry, we're going to seduce you. You're going to maybe not unhate it by the end, but you will maybe have more of an appreciation if you weren't a fan.
Ones. We finish on a
Magic Cask, yes.
As well, so
that's very true.
Share with us, and you might find that you like Peat Monster because it's slightly different from your regular peaty whiskey.
Yeah, I think a lot of people someone's just asked, Magic Cask isn't peaty, but we thought you are the first international tasting we've ever done with Magic Cask, and we really wanted to showcase it, so we thought we'll put it at the end. So I would just recommend everyone has a big glass of water before we taste Magic Cask, because it's really, really special. So I think hopefully you'll love it. But with Peat Monster, which we'll talk about now, we have all the beautiful kind of rich sweetness of Kalila and the beautiful, and I call this medicinal, like a phenolic kind of, it smells like hospitals and like fresh leather kind of smell of Laphroaig. So 2 of my absolute favourite distilleries in the world. And when we blended them together, they just worked. We've used Kalila and Laphroaig for a number of years together. Sometimes we've blended in some Ardmore. Sometimes we've had some Leitchig. It all depends on the casks that were available, but we've changed our recipe, and at the moment it is 64% Kalila and 35% Laphroaig. I keep looking at the bottle as if it's going to tell me the answers. And we use 1% of our spice tree blend that's blended in that 4th whiskey cask, which is our Burgundy Toast cask. And this just enhances the kind of woody kind of flavours that the malt whiskey has and rounds off all the flavours of Peat Monster. So we're really lucky. I love Peat Monster. I love it as my last whiskey of the day, last whiskey of the evening. My first whiskey of the evening, if I'm having dinner with friends, I harass Céline to try Peat Monster with dessert all the time. I absolutely love the citrus flavours that I get from that Kalila. So one of my favourite things to pair Peat Monster with, if I'm looking for something sweet, is lemon tart. It goes amazing in a whiskey sour, which is basically a lemon meringue pie in a glass. but it also goes amazingly with, someone was saying smoked salmon for Rogue's Banquet, but it goes great with oysters, with seafood, with, it is everything. There is nothing I could imagine putting peat monster with that I couldn't fall in love with. So I'm sure someone will now prove me wrong by saying like strawberry jam or something like that, but I'm sure we could work around it. It goes really well with like toast and marmalade as well. It's those big, rich, fruity flavors that it just really works with. I just love it. It is my favorite of our permanent range. So, and I luckily
You may have noticed that the labels changed over the last couple of years. The recipe also changed in the bottle. So if you have that bottle, this is the one that Jill is talking about. If you had the previous bottle, which is a brown label with the golden monster, it's a slightly different recipe. That was back when we had a little bit of leche and some Ardmore in the recipe.
Yeah.
So we decided with the new painted label to actually focus on Islay and have two Islay modes working alongside each other to create that really rich, peaty, medicinal, citrusy smokiness that we really enjoy from the peat monster.
Yeah. Andreas has said you can't go wrong with Kalila, which I know Céline will 100% agree with.
Definitely.
We are devotees of the Kalila full stop. And American Band-Aids, which someone mentioned. I've never smelled an American Band-Aid, but that's always what I get told whenever we do this. For me, I love the smell of that medicinal smell, but we have a thing in the UK, or we did when I was very young, called Germaline, and it was an antiseptic lotion, and it smells exactly like peat monster. Now, I was a very clumsy child, so that smell has stayed with me my whole life, but fortunately, I love it. For some people, it's the worst smell, but for me, I could like wear it like a perfume. I think it's beautiful, so I could just drink it. The first release of Peat Monster was a limited edition called The Monster, which was done for Park Avenue, and that was released in 2004. Gerd can probably remember far more about the release than I can.
We were jealous in Europe because it was a launch for the New York whiskey shop and only there. So everybody in Germany, all the importers were complaining. So why did we get that as well?
I know, rude, very rude. I think it's probably, we should all thank Gerd for all the importers complaining, because that then became the release of the Peat Monster, which is now our permanent line. But yes, so thank you, Gerd, for complaining, and we are very grateful. We sometimes release limited edition Peat Monsters at Cask Strength. I believe we did one in 2015. Céline will be able to make sure of this. And that was released only as a magnum. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Right.
So there's a huge navy blue labeled magnum of Peat Monster at Cask Strength. We also occasionally do limited editions. Our 10th anniversary Peat Monster, I believe, was Cask Strength.
Yes.
And has this...
We did one called the Peat Monster Reserve, which we bottled. It wasn't quite cask strength, it was 48.9%. But it was also bottled in a magnum bottle. Because, you know, when you bottle at higher strengths, you need a bigger bottle to contain all that monster strength.
I do agree with Céline on that, because there is something really special about cask strength peated whiskies, which I absolutely love. And I love cask strength Peat Monster. So I always hope, every time they say we're doing a new limited edition, I'm like, will it be cask strength peat? Like, I just think they're delicious. But Peat Monster is beautiful how she is. I think at 46% she drinks really, really lovely. And she's just really workable for everything. So yeah.
There's one thing about cask strength whiskies that most international producers don't like, is because when you get to the UK, you get very high taxes on alcohol, which is about 27 or 28 pounds a liter of alcohol, I think.
Yeah.
In Germany, I think, and in Germany we got 13 euros on a liter of alcohol. So that's why the difference between a cask strength whiskey in Germany and the regular whiskey is not that big. But prices will go up in other markets. So that's why some producers are scared of doing cask strength whiskey for their standard thing. So.
Oh, and also we don't necessarily like cask strength whiskey with some of our blends. Like say if you were to try the spice tree at cask strength, it's undrinkable. It's completely unbalanced and you don't get the best of that blend. So it's a lot easier for us to reduce them down to the strengths we believe all these malts work together. It works nicely with the Peat Monster and cask strength, but I think some of the others would not be enjoyable. So that's why we prefer not to do too many cask strength bottlings, just because they drink better at a lower strength.
Sure.
I see that we've had a wee comment that's just too heavy for them. And I completely understand that, it is very smoky. While it's not the kind of smoky wildness of like a limited edition Ardbeg or a personal favorite like one of the wild Octomores, it has got a lot of peat in it and it's got a lot of richness. When I first started drinking peated whiskey, I was really scared of it because I didn't know if I would enjoy the flavor. And one of the first whiskies I'd ever tasted when I was about 17 years old was a peated whiskey, and it really, my palate wasn't ready for that kind of flavor, so I just kind of was put off. But one of the things I like to do when I'm a bit nervous of new flavors in whiskey is have it with ginger beer, because with something like Peat Monster, that smokiness kind of is there in the background. And I love that though, a bit like old shoes. There is a leatheriness to it. And I think that works beautifully with something like a ginger beer. If it's just a little smoke that you're adding to your ginger beer and maybe a wee bit of lime, it just kind of lightens everything and lets you get more used to the smoky flavors. Because for me, that was a big step. I wasn't sure if I was going to enjoy peat and smoke, which obviously when you blend is something you really need to kind of learn to appreciate, even if you don't love it. And I was lucky I tipped right over that the whiskey I will pick pretty much first if I'm at a bar with a friend would be a peaty whiskey now. But if you are interested in trying it with other things, I always recommend ginger beer. I think it lets you taste things without kind of getting overwhelmed by them, unless of course you don't like ginger beer, in which case we will need to find you something new to try it with. But yeah, I do. I think as peated whiskies go, I think people expect a lot more of it. They expect it to be bigger, and I like the fact it's quite subtle and it just slowly overtakes and becomes this rich, big, kind of smoky at the back of your throat kind of flavour in time. Every sip is a new bit of smoke kind of rolling across your taste buds. On that note though, let us try what I think is definitely James's finest Peat Monster blend that he's created. With Peat Monster Arcana, thank you very much, Céline. My bottle is currently on holiday in Scotland, so I might see it. I might see it in the future, but it is not with me just now. Peat Monster Arcana is all about experimental oak. So we use our custom French oak casks again, and we filled Peat Monster in there to mature it. But we also use quite a lot, 10.5% of Milton Duff, which is an unpeated whiskey. Then we use a little Ardbeg, rich and creamy, but really tarry, like hot tires in the summer, which I love. I love the smell of that, like asphalt kind of tarmac kind of smell. And then beautiful Talisker, which is a very light style of whiskey, but quite salty and very kind of fresh, being hit in the face on a cold winter's day by the seashore kind of flavour. So very rich, very light, smooth background of this big Ardbeg flavour, but then the subtlety of that Milton Duff taking the rough edges away. And then we've got our lovely oakiness as well, which is kind of being brought in. So yeah, I think it's actually very unfair to compare Peat Monster and Peat Monster Arcana because they are so wildly different. They are both peaty whiskies in their own way, but Peat Monster Arcana it's a different animal. It's like it's like an elephant and a tiger. They're both there, but they're very different. So yeah,
it's a celebration for the 20th anniversary as well.
Yep.
Because obviously the Peat Monster is our best-selling whiskey in the whole range. That's the one we sell the most across the world.
Wow.
So we thought it would be nice to actually have limited edition to celebrate our Peat Monster and celebrate the fact that Compass Box has been doing what we do for the last 20 years now. So we celebrated our 20th anniversary in October this year. So we wanted something very, very special. So Rogue's Banquet was the first one of our limited editions. And we launched the special version of the Hedonism, which was called Felicitas, which I believe is already sold out, but now because it was quite a small quantity of bottles. And then
you can see one just over Celine's shoulder, but it's so glossy, it's very hard to put on camera.
Yeah, and then we had obviously the Peat Monster Arcana released just I think September time, and to finish off the year with a bang, because we wanted to really, really celebrate those 20 years. We actually released the Magic Cask, which, as I mentioned, you guys are the first people to ever taste with Jill. On an international tasting day, so it's really, really fun and exciting tonight.
I know, you are literally the second people I will ever have tasted this whiskey with, and you're only pipped at the post by 3 days, I think. So I mean, we're all very close. We're not gonna pull hairs, but yeah, Peat Monster Arcana, very beautiful. Someone said it's very elegant on the nose. I think it's no monster, someone has said, and I completely agree with them, because this is much tamer. Maybe Peat Monster is like an alley cat, and Peat Monster Arcana is more like a house cat. It's still got that instinct, but it's a bit kind of like more approachable. Someone has also been asking, sorry, I just see them as they pop up. Someone's also been asking, do we use any colouring or chill filtering? We don't do either. We don't do either with any of our whiskies. We do filter our whiskey to remove cask char. So it's kind of like a coffee filter, but on a much bigger scale, because we don't want people to buy our whiskey and there to be bits of ash from the inside of the barrels floating in the whiskey. So we remove any kind of physical bits of cask from it, but we don't actually chill filter, and we never add colour. I'm very much of the opinion that it is fine for companies to do both those things. It's completely different how you produce your whiskey. But when you chill filter, for me, it removes some of that beautiful mouthfeel that you get. And then when you remove that mouthfeel, you almost have to add the caramel back in, because that's what then gives you that lovely coating on the inside of your mouth, and just helps coat it. But for us, our whiskey is as close to what it came out the barrel like as we can possibly get. And I love that. I think it's delicious. Yeah, someone said Arcana is the domesticated Peat Monster, and I quite like that. I know.
What was the question again about the labels of the artist?
Oh, yeah.
So the Peat Monster, of course, is a special painting by Mark Burkhardt. Burkhardt? Yeah. And born in Germany, the artist, yeah. And the company is doing that is called Stranger and Stranger. And you're working now with them for 12 years, I think?
12 years, yeah. 2018 was our 10th anniversary, which feels so recently. We did a limited edition whiskey with them to celebrate their labels and things like that. The whiskey was called Stranger and Stranger. And yeah, they are the geniuses behind the kind of labels and all the beautiful products that we produce and make. Oh, Celine's got a bottle of Stranger and Stranger there. It is just lovely. They're just so creative. They're probably some of the best in the business when it comes to whiskey. And they've won so many awards for whiskey bottles that they've made for us, for gin that they've done, all kinds of different labelings. They're geniuses. I see someone has asked, is the difference, one is an Isla and one is a Sky malt. The Talisker, which we've used in Peat Monster Arcana, was a small parcel of Talisker, and it makes up 73% of the recipe. Oh, sorry, 72.9% of the recipe. So we're using that big Talisker, which is fresh and kind of salty, and then we're supplementing, instead of that big Lafroig kind of flavour, we're bringing in a big Ardbeg flavour. So we've kind of flipped the style on its head. But basically, we wanted something in a Peat Monster vein. We've also got those casks of Peat Monster, which were heavily toasted, which we've used as well. So we've just completely deconstructed it and put a really like peaty style whiskey together. So yeah, that's where we are just now. But yeah, I love it. If
I just posted the link to Stranger and Stranger's website just to get just to get an impression what they are doing, and it's pretty much more than Compass Box, but of course Compass Box is the most beautiful things on there. But anyway, you see their portfolio, and it's amazing what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite gins is from Harris, and they did the bottle design. I Love Harris gin is just stunning, and it's meant to look like the sand when the sea pulls back from the beach, so it's all rippled. Beautiful, and it really invokes all the colors of the sky and the sea when you're out in the islands. So yeah, they put a lot of thought in, the same way that with beautiful things like the Spaniard, the story of the Spaniard, which we have here. They completely designed that whole concept for us, and yeah, it's really, really lovely. All we knew is he wanted a Spanish style, but we didn't know anything other than that, and then Stranger just created this label which blew everyone away. We've got a wee question there. We've actually got two quite similar questions. One, how old are the whiskies we use? Every single batch and every single whiskey has a different age component. Again, if you're ever interested in the ages of the things you're drinking, hello@compassboxwhiskey.com will be able to answer your questions on the ages. Someone has also asked, how long do we keep our whiskies? Do you keep them for a long time? Almost all the whiskey we use has been purchased matured. For our 20th anniversary Rogue's Banquet, the majority of those whiskies are 25. So they were actually laid down to mature before the company even existed, before John had even thought about starting his own blending company. And so we buy a lot of mature whiskey, which the distilleries have held, but we have started filling our own whiskey barrels with whiskies from distilleries over Scotland. So they are slowly maturing, and hopefully one day we'll be able to make use of them. We produced a whiskey called Whisky de Table for La Maison de Whisky, who got the very first batch of our 100% Compass Box matured whiskey, but it's still quite young. She's only just coming to 17, those casks now, to 7 years old, sorry, now. So she's just becoming the right kind of age for using more of our blends. So yeah.
There's nothing like a Compass Box warehouse in Scotland somewhere.
No, sadly not. Dunnage warehouses, which are where the big racks are kept, are absolutely massive. I cannot even, they are like aircraft hangars, and to store all the casks that we use would require us to have, I will say dozens, but probably hundreds of availability just to store our casks. So they're stored in warehouses that we lease space from all over Scotland, or that the distilleries themselves own, that we then purchase the casks from, and the cost of the maturation will be in the cost of that cask. So yeah. Whiskey number 6. Yes.
Exciting.
Highly recommend everyone have a big glass of water. I realized I did a really weird 6 there. I'm not quite sure I could do. Oh, I'm actually really bad with like quick fire fingers, because I'm that was a good one. But yeah, so we'll do whiskey number 6. Big glass of water. This is unpeated, but it is rich. It has a big bold flavor, but it's not smoky. So hopefully we're gonna pull anyone who wasn't a big peaty fan kind of back here. And we are going to use a whiskey in this. Well, we did use, but I'm going to talk about this as if we're creating it as we drink it. In this, we are going to use a whiskey which when I first tasted the parcel, described as liquid sunshine. It was like summer in a glass. It was golden and bright and fresh and vanilla and kind of like sunshine on yellow daisies. I loved it. I was so excited. So we used this beautiful Imperial. When I first tasted it, it was only 20 years old and I loved it. And then 2 years only brightened that lovely kind of rich vanilla flavor. And what we did there was we thought, well, that's stunning. What's it missing? Which I always think is a really difficult thing for me, because sometimes I'll taste something and just get bowled over with how much I love it. And James suggested that we use some Craigellachie for a heavier body. So the Imperial was light and delicate and gorgeous. In the nose, it's like spring. It is like spring. I love it. It's just, oh, it's stunning. So we used this Craigellachie, which had a heavier style, but we used what we call re-rack first fill sherry butts. So we matured new make Craigellachie in first fill bourbon barrels for 1 year. Then we emptied the spirit, because it's not whiskey yet, because it's only a year in wood. We emptied that spirit into a big tank and then filled sherry butts with it. So it's had a year of sweetness from the bourbon casks, and then it's had 3 years of maturation in the first fill sherry casks. So that's called re-racking. It's a double maturation. You might have seen it in other whiskies like Balvenie double wood, where they use 2 different kinds of wood to mature one whiskey. That's what we did with the Craigellachie, which makes up part of it. 1 year in bourbon casks and 3 years in first fill sherry casks. And that's just brought this rich, sweet, kind of red berry, full-on cherry kind of flavor. But then when you've got the Imperial mixed in with it, it just, I don't know, it's summertime. It's summertime whiskey, but also it really wants to like punch you in the face with how good it is. I just love it. I think it's the best way to describe it. It's like getting hit by a wave of sunshine. I think it's beautiful.
It's like a tiger jumping through a hoop of fire.
It is. The Craigellachie maybe could be the hoop and the Imperial the tiger. It's certainly a label, I think, is the way to describe it. It still gives me a bit of a shock every time I see it, because it's just so like, it's so out there. But
I don't have one.
You don't have you now, Céline. I know for a fact that one is on its way to you right now. It is coming in a parcel, which should hopefully arrive with you, if not tomorrow, then Monday. Though I know that Céline will be wanting a little sniff of this when it arrives. So, yeah. But I love this. The Imperial, for me, absolutely blows everything out the way. Imperial is actually a malt whiskey distillery, and if I am correct, it is no longer with us. Right. No, I'm just going to check. I'm going to have to Google this, because while I always think I've got great knowledge of Scotland, my distillery information can sometimes be a bit askew, because I'm never quite sure where it was in the history of, here it is. So it closed in 1998 after being opened in 1897, and it was in Carron in Speyside. I am from Speyside. I don't even know where that is.
That's where Tianinek is.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yep. Right.
Yep.
Thank God Céline knows. And Gerd, we've got a Scot and a German who are actually able to tell you. I'm now searching directions from my house so that I can. It's in Aberlour. Oh, well, you learn something new every day. So the Imperial Distillery from my house in Scotland is 12 miles. That's terrifying. I should know that. I should really know that. Wow. Yeah, but yeah, tragically, it was closed in 1998. So that's it. There is no more. All the Imperial we have, much like Port Dundas, which is a grain whiskey we use in quite a lot of our limited edition kind of hedonisms, and occasionally in a regular hedonism, they were mothballed. I remember watching them pull. I went to university in Glasgow, and I remember them watching them pull down the Port Dundas distillery, because it was right in the centre of Glasgow, and that felt quite big. But tragically, I was only 11. no, I was 12 when Imperial shut, so that's one that I hope will not remember for now, but it's just stunning. There was something amazing about it, and yeah. I like that Judith who says, sorry, this is for girls, because I'm like,
No.
I always love when I'm drinking whiskey with like my girlfriends and they're like, is this a girly whiskey? And I was like, do you like it? And they're like, mm-hmm. And I'm like, it can be girly for you, but if that guy likes it, it's manly for him. And I just think whiskey it's for everyone. But I love the idea that good whiskey is just universal. And I don't know, I just think it's great. But yeah, Magic Cask is so special. I love it.
It is for the good old days.
It is. I know. It just makes me happy. Every time I sip it, I have a tiny little bottle that I had that I've got in my glass. And I'm like, every time I sip it, I'm just like, oh, it might be 6 degrees outside and raining at the moment, but it feels like the southern kind of bit of France for me at the moment. So that's very nice. But yeah. So that's it. That's Magic Cask. Did anyone have a favourite of all the whiskies we've tried today? Because I'm always curious because I can't pick. I tell everyone is my favourite. My favourite is the one in the glass.
From the comments, I reckon Peat Monster Arcana did pretty well tonight.
Yep.
It was so quiet.
I know, everyone is so well behaved. Peat Monster and Peat Monster Arcana. Yeah. I think I don't know, I always find like, I'm going to have to be really general and I apologise. I always find like Germany, kind of Norway, Sweden, you guys seem to have a much smokier leaning palate than when I do maybe France. I mean, I'm not saying French people do not love smoky whiskey, but they seem to be a wee bit more into the kind of lighter, sweeter. And in Spain and Italy, it's more kind of vanilla and creamy. So it's more the first half of this tasting than the last half. But I don't know, maybe it's something about the style that kind of just speaks. I think that, I don't know, you guys smoke a lot of like fish, I think is the thing. For me in Scotland,
it's more northern part of Germany, smoking, I think. Of course, you find it everywhere where you get fish, of course. But I think you can sell a whiskey like Whisky de Table in France. You can't sell that in Germany.
No. Would people be expecting bigger?
Not in, yeah. It's light, it's delicate, it's pre-dinner, but it's nothing really to appreciate when you have a big whiskey. It's not that, yeah.
Yeah. It's quite balanced. It's like a blood from every whiskey that we've done tonight. So I don't think there's a favorite. I think people are liking pretty much everything, which is fantastic.
I know, and that's why I always feel bad kind of lumping Germany in together and being like, German people like smoked whiskey, when I'm like, no, people love all different things. But yeah, I suppose I kind of think of like big flavors from Germany, sauerkraut and things like that, and that kind of, I know, I'm trying to think like, what do I think about when I think about Germany? And I'm like, sauerkraut, red cabbage dishes, all those kind of things. Sausages, and now marzipan as well. Oh, we're not allowed to talk about the schnitzel. Last time I was on with Gerd and Céline, everyone was talking about Céline's amazing schnitzel, and I have not had schnitzel yet since we had that conversation over a month ago.
It's the best thing. Especially when it's bigger than your head.
I know, the size of I would like a schnitzel the size of my face, please.
Yes.
But oh yeah, we will have to meet up in Germany and make sure we have lots of sausage and schnitzel and red cabbage. But yeah, and marzipan, of course.
Absolutely.
Actually, yeah. Jill, looking forward to host you in Germany.
Is that because it's going to be a food fest? I'll be like, Gerd, everything, feed me everything.
Yeah, that's what Céline told me as well. So, and I did.
I think it's fab. Oh, I do. That's one of my favorite parts. If I take out, here's something great for everyone. My job is whiskey blender, but I'm so lucky that I get to travel and do whiskey tastings and do some brand ambassador work. And if I take the whiskey blending out of my job, my favorite bit is getting to go to places where I'll get to see Gerd in real life, and he will be like, you haven't tried something amazing until you've tried this. And local knowledge of like great food and like great drink and all that kind of stuff, I love it. It's amazing. It's, after getting to share whiskey with people, it's my favorite thing. And what more could there be? Eating and drinking. We're at the right time of year for it as well. So
Yeah,
Gerd will be an excellent tutor.
Yes, excellent. So I think we're through now. So is there any more questions on the people? So, there's another question. How many people work at Compass Box right now?
So I am going to say 15. Does that sound about right, Céline?
Yeah, it will be 15, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, 15. I know. That's the thing.
And only 3 involved in the whiskey making process.
No, only three whiskey blenders. John, James, and myself, and everyone's kind of dual role. So all the whiskey blenders are kind of 50% blender and 50% something else. So I'm 50% blender, 50% ambassador. James is 50% marketing, 50% blender. And to be honest, John is 50% blender, like 300% every other part of the company. He is, yeah. And yeah, I see someone saying I would be in for baking with Whiskey and Céline.
Anytime.
I am excited that Céline, I want her. This is not confirmed, so we can just pressure her. I would like Céline to start up her own baking YouTube channel where she bakes with whiskey.
Great idea.
Maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks, you could just provide something beautiful and then make it with us. So yeah, you could do cook along.
I know, exciting.
I would love that.
I've done flambe in front of my screen on Zoom, so you know I can do anything.
I genuinely thought when Céline had her blowtorch out, I was like, there's definitely, I know exactly where she lives. I had her address. I was ready to call the fire brigade just in case of emergencies. I was like, we will save you. But yeah, thank you so much though for having us tonight. And I realize it's 8:30, so everyone's probably kind of nice and warm with their whiskies and just kind of really relaxing. But it's been such a lovely evening to be here. And yeah, it's been really,
just
really great.
A massive thank you to Gerd and the team at Prineus for making up those beautiful tasting kits. Like that was all handmade for you guys. They look fantastic. It's just so wonderful. You did that, and all the documents you got with all the recipes, you did that as well. So thank you so much for organizing all of this, Gerd.
Yeah,
fantastic event, and
you've done amazingly.
You see all of you guys, even though we're not seeing each other face to face this year. It's so nice to be able to do that with you.
Yeah,
and yeah,
it really is.
So thank you very much, girls. So that was the last question. There will be a review because, of course, we recorded everything, and yes, I should have told you before.
I know.
Anyway, we have a brand new YouTube channel for Prineus in Germany. So we will have to edit the video a little bit, just cut the first and the last things off, and then post it on YouTube as well, so that everybody can rewatch it. Because we had a lot of tasting packs, and we had roughly 90 people today, which is quite a lot, I think, for an online tasting.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And I think everybody was happy and found his favorite whiskey here. So, and yeah, we will put it on YouTube so that you can rewatch it and buy the whiskeys again and then taste them again.
Of course.
So,
and if anyone is shy, you are very welcome. Gerd will, I'm sure, confirm this, but you're very welcome to email us. We're happy to answer any of your questions. So if you have anything you don't want to be asked in front of everyone, you're welcome to email us, and we will try so hard to get back to you. Obviously, with Christmas coming, it's a little quieter, but we will definitely get back to you with any questions you might have.
So it's hello@compassboxwhiskey.com.
That's it, Gerd. It's like we practiced this.
So, thank you guys. And ich sage jetzt nochmal auf Deutsch, in German now. Vielen Dank für die ganzen Leute, die mir zugeguckt haben. Ich hoffe, ihr hattet ein bisschen Spaß dabei. Sieht auf jeden Fall danach aus, nach den Beteiligungen. Und wir werden das sicherlich öfter machen mit unseren Produkten und haben schon die ein oder andere Idee, was wir machen können. Und wir werden immer Leute dabei haben, die das Produkt auch selbst hergestellt haben oder gemacht haben. So I just told them we will always have people here that manufactured actually the whiskey that we will tell, and not somebody who's telling about it. Because even when I tell the same things, it's not as original as when you do it, of course.
But well, thank you again, Gerd. I know I've had a great evening, and I'm pretty sure I speak for Céline as well. This has been
definitely.
I know, one of my last tastings of the year. I think for Céline as well. One of our last kind of 2020 tastings, and I'm really glad that I got to spend it with you guys and drinking some of my favorite whiskies. So yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye,
Merry Christmas to
and
everyone.
have a nice evening, everybody.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
I can never leave.